Good morning. Okay, so Sean and I today, we read through John 7, the remainder of the chapter. I know we finished off last week at 36, so we just finished the chapter out this morning. So a couple things that came out of it. The first section is from 37 to 39, and Jesus stands up and he talks about the coming of the Holy Spirit. It is the last, and he does this on a specific day. So if you want to research why, that might be a something fun to do. Why did he stand up and talk about the Holy Spirit on the last and most important day of the festival? That's what verse 37 says. And it would have been the Feast of Tabernacles, because we read that earlier in chapter 7. The stream of salvation. So one of the streams that that's a promise of the Holy Spirit. If you look at Isaiah 12:3, it talks about the stream of salvation. So we can know for sure that that is one of the streams that that is provided to us through the work of the Holy Spirit. And then we moved into the crowd's reaction, because every time Jesus says something, there's a reaction in the crowd, and that was from verses 40 to 44. And there's a division that's happening again, and people are saying, is he the Messiah? Is he the prophet? Oh, he can't be the Messiah, because we know the Messiah is supposed to come from Bethlehem, but he comes from Galilee. And when Sean and I were talking about this, you know, no one asked Jesus. They just kept assuming. They kept talking amongst themselves and feeding off of each other's opinions, and but this kept them from the truth. What if they would have just asked? Like, that was just a question I had. Like, what if someone would have just asked Jesus and just have been like, where were you born? Like, where did you come from? And Jesus and just, how often do we maybe do the same thing, and how can we learn from this and then apply it to our own lives? And just going to the source, going to Jesus, going to the Word when we have questions, or when we don't understand something, because they didn't understand. They had questions, but they went to each other, and it just produced more division. And Sean had mentioned that you would have known that during the time of Jesus's birth, that there was a census, that he would have come and to Bethlehem, because of how old Jesus was, that they didn't really do the math, I guess, and they didn't put it together, or they just didn't know their history very well, or something. But Sean was just like, why didn't they know? So so that was that one, and now they move on to that was the crowd, and now the next section from 45 to 52 to the end of the chapter 7 is the reaction from the Pharisees. And the temple police come to the chief of priests and the Pharisees, and they were sent, back in chapter 7 to go apprehend Jesus. But they come back empty-handed, and the police are like, no one's ever spoke like this, and the Pharisees are mocking the temple police, being like, are you fooled too? Have we, the religious believers, the ones that know the law, if we don't believe, surely you shouldn't either. And they were mocking these temple police, but the same way they were admitting their own guilt. The Pharisees and the religious leaders, they were responsible to feed people the word. They were responsible to not only know the law, to live by the law, and then to teach the law. So if the people didn't know the law, then they weren't doing their job. And they say in verse 49, I'm sorry, but this crowd which doesn't know the law is accursed. So they were just saying something that was actually condemning them, that was their own guilt, like they were mocking in pride but then again, they were also speaking against themselves because they were the ones responsible to be teaching the law. So I found that interesting. And one other thing, Nicodemus comes and he says, we know Nicodemus has already had his meeting with Jesus because we've read that before. And now he comes out and he says, our law doesn't judge a man before it hears from him and knows what he's doing, does it? So he stands up in the midst of this and he's like, well, wait a minute. And he says this. Okay, so this was actually spoken back in the Old Testament. So Nicodemus, and it was spoken by Moses when Moses was what's the note? You can go back and read it. It's in Deuteronomy. Anyway, you can go back and find it in this area, but it's in Deuteronomy, and it's when Moses needs help. And his father-in-law is like, all right, like, why don't you just set people to help you? And Moses tells these people exactly this, like, to judge a man, for people to judge and allow people to hear him before they judge him. So Nicodemus is actually speaking the law that they all believe. So it's really interesting because the Pharisees, there's a group of Pharisees, and they're all discussing something that they don't believe in. But Nicodemus comes up and speaks what they all believe in, but because they don't like it, they mock it. They are literally mocking the law that they abide by, and in turn mocking Moses. And it's wild to me because it's like, they say, well, aren't you, they reply to Nicodemus, aren't you from Galilee too? Investigate, and you'll see that no prophet arises from Galilee. So this is also a showing of their lack of understanding, because it says in my notes that Jonah and Elijah and Nahum were the three prophets that were supposed to have come out of Galilee. So there were prophets that came out of Galilee, but they were so closed up, closed in their mind, that they were unable to even receive the truth that they had lived upon, the laws that they had lived in. They were unable to receive that. So anyway, so that is the end of chapter 7. And we will meet again on Thursday and start in chapter 8, which is looking like it's going to be good. So it's all good. All right. So I hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will see you Thursday. Bye.